Well, this event is very important that is taking place in Brussels today. It is deepening ties between EU and Africa, looking at development paradigm in new perspective of achieving MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, but also looking at in perspective where Africa can help itself face the challenges of 21st century in more concrete way. So as Director of Energy and Climate Change from the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, my role was here to give inputs how we can mainstream energy into development agenda when we look at partnership between EU and Africa. We believe that access to energy is one of the most critical needs of Africa as of now, and how to mainstream access to energy with productive activities. In addition to that, we believe that it's very important to bring in private sector, vibrant private sector into investments in energy sector that can lead to almost 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa and other parts of Africa to have access to more reliable and affordable forms of energy. There's also a gender dimension to that mostly women and girl child, they get affected when they do not have access to energy, where they have to really go out every day 2 to 4 hours to get fuel wood for cooking at home. So this gender dimension also become very important in that sense. And fourthly, on the investment side, we believe while financing is not everything so far as energy and environmental issues are concerned, but financing gap is very important when you look at needs for Africa, where we are talking about almost $40 billion needed as of now to make it to a sustainable energy path, that is to improve its access to energy and energy efficiency in systems, while we are having only $10 to $15 billion coming in from various quarters. And that gap has to be met by a global community to come together. In addition to that, we have to add capacity building, training, and other issues to really have integrated approach to energy issues in Africa.
Mr. Monga, you make a lot of really good points. Let me ask you specifically about the participation of the private sector in giving more people access to energy. Can you give us successful examples of where that's actually happening today?
A number of places in Africa itself where public-private partnerships are working, private sector is moving in many countries, especially, for example, in Rwanda, the private sector is helping to set up small hydro programs, which we feel as a decentralized energy systems based on renewable energy can make a lot of difference. Private sector is also moving in areas like solar energy, which we feel is very important for Africa given its irradiation rates there. Private sector is also moving in, bringing in those areas where we need co-financing on grid-connected power sector, power generation in Africa. So we believe that private sector is doing a lot, but it can do much more if we have right policies in place, right enabling environment in place, and we have local capacity built in there to absorb those investments coming in from Europe and other parts of the world.
Mr. Monga, I'd like to talk about the role of the UNIDO, specifically the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, in this vein. You've announced recently, I think it was in August, an agreement to provide some aid to the Southern African Development Community, the SADC. Talk to us a little bit about some of your ongoing projects there.
UNIDO is a UN-based specialized agency focusing on sustainable industrial development. It's of course focusing on sustainable and production and consumption patterns, and we believe that UNIDO can do a lot to have integration of energy and environment, that green industry concept bringing in within private sector in Africa. In UNIDO, we are working on a number of issues, including trade capacity building, agri-businesses, private sector development, and also, of course, bringing in energy access to poor communities, linking to productive uses, and bringing in cleaner production concept, that is sustainable use of water, resources, minerals, all together for making African industries more competitive. From energy perspective, where I am working in, we have really developed recently a large program for West Africa, 18 countries in West Africa, where we are trying to bring in renewable energy and energy efficiency to make those countries more self-reliant on their own energy sources. We are also working with Global Environment Facility, which has provided almost $45 million for this West Africa program to work also in East Africa and SADC countries. For example, in South Africa, we are working very closely to make their industries more climate-proofing of industries, also bringing in industrial energy efficiency in South Africa, where we believe that global standards like ISO 50001, which will be in place in next 2 years' time, will make a lot of difference. We are working in Mozambique, for instance, very closely with the government to really put forward solar-powered ICT systems in remote areas where we can help communities to have access to computers, internet, and other facilities to become more of a knowledge economy for themselves, to help themselves. And we are working, for example, Lesotho with Philip and other private sector companies to have improved cook stove program, where women are part of that whole preparing and manufacturing those improved cook stoves, while also installation will make a lot of difference in the lives of women in Africa.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but we're running out of time, and I really wanted to ask you your expectations for the summit in November, the EU-Africa summit. Just as briefly as possible, sir, can you tell us what are going to be the absolute priorities there?
Summit in November will be very important. It will deepen the ties. In fact, I think Europe will reinforce its ties with Africa, and then looking at those critical areas, infrastructure, industrial competitiveness, or making not only Africa as a place for exporting its commodities, but also having value addition there, where Africa also can become markets and have vibrant markets working in all economic sectors, having employment, and using those green models approach, where we have green economy, green jobs for Africa, where Africa can also attain 6 to 8% growth rate, at the same time uses its natural resources sustainably, having access to energy to everyone in Africa, and of course making these industries, private sector, more competitive.